capture and storage, what that means is you can go negative relative to the atmosphere, because you're burning the trees, capturing the carbon and sticking it somewhere, and then the next generation of trees sucks it back out again. So, what about policy? Well, some of you, have you heard of the Energy Independence and Security Act? Do you know what that is? In 2007. Gee, it's been a long time. I've been doing the analysis for EPA of what different provisions do on this seemingly forever. I guess it's been since the 2005 Energy Act, but conventional biofuels need to have a 20% reduction in greenhouse gases. More advanced ones need to get up into the 50% range. So what this policy does is it's trying to switch our mix over to the cellulosic sources. It doesn't do anything on electricity, although today we're starting to talk about renewable portfolio standards that would force states to have a particular amount of renewable electricity, whether it come from wind or whatever. Yes.
What, I'm sorry, I didn't catch. What does LCA stand for?
It's the percentage carbon offset. So basically what it says is that it's life cycle analysis, but what it really says is you got to offset
net carbon reduction.
If gasoline creates 100 units of carbon when you emit it, this thing had better be 50 or less to meet a 50% life cycle analysis. Now, EPA has been real optimistic, has been implementing this thing, but we've run into a few problems. According to the congressional legislation, in 2010, we were supposed to make 250 million gallons of cellulosic ethanol. EPA reduced that to 6 million gallons. Basically, we don't know how to make it at a large scale, and I don't even know where the 6 came from. I think that was kind of optimistic in itself. The Energy Information Agency, which falls under your assistant secretary who's coming here, or whatever their title is, says that the production's likely to be under 4. And EPA set a price for this stuff of $1.13 for each unit of cellulosic biofuel waiver credit. Although I think this stuff still probably costs about $50 a gallon to make nowadays, just because we're really in the scientific experimentation. They had an overall volume requirement that we make 13 million gallons last year. Now there are some obstacles to this. This particular picture here is a picture of ethanol production capacity. Notice here, I got my numbers wrong a minute ago. This was about 1.8 billion gallons in 2001, and we got up to 14, and we'll be about 15 this year. So here's the capacity that we build, and here's the production. Our capacity actually has outstripped production. They built a few of these plants up near Pampa, Texas, and right now I think that the plant has a pretty little ribbon on it and nobody working there. They've gone out of business, I think, because things just got too expensive. Corn at $7 a bushel is not real attractive to convert into ethanol with our current energy prices. Plus, this is what happened to corn prices up until 2008. So notice, as the ethanol production took off, so did the corn price. And that's caused a number of problems here and around the world.
But doesn't the government just subsidy it and bring it back down?
No. The government doesn't subsidy it. Other governments do. Our government does not. What our government usually is in the business is supporting the price to make it higher. when I became an ag economist back before your parents were born, probably, corn was $2 a bushel, that was in '73. In 2001, it was $2 a bushel. In between, we had Jimmy Carter, meaning that inflation was big, and it was really about 67 cents a bushel. Today, even at $3, it's almost equivalent to what it was 30 years ago in terms of real purchasing power of the dollar. And the government has been supporting the prices. It hasn't been subsidizing. It subsidizes bioenergy. This has caused a problem throughout the world. What's happened is in Brazil, you can grow corn down here, and this is Brazil, in the southern part of the country. Right now, they grow a lot of soybeans there. If you put corn in, they tend to move soybeans a little bit further north into the grasslands in this part of the country, which runs the cattle out of the grasslands, and they go up into the rainforest. They tend to cut about 70% of the rainforest that's been cut down. It's been cut down in the name of livestock production. And this has raised the deforestation rates and the probability of deforestation. So these higher prices have induced countries like Brazil that have a large land base to expand their production. This is called the indirect land use problem, and it's also induced a lot of starvation in various parts of the world because food is doubled and tripled in cost in some areas. Rice went way up for a while. I don't know where it is right now. So what can we do? Well, we've been starting to talk about raising some alternative crops like energy sorghum and miscanthus. I don't think it's still there, but when you went to Navasota years ago, if you looked over on the side, there were all these tall bamboo-looking things, and that's a high-yielding energy crop. Is a form of bamboo, some of them. Notice with corn, you can get somewhere around 150 bushels of corn an acre, and 1 bushel will make 3 gallons of ethanol, so you get about 450 gallons per acre. With these energy sorghums, you can get 1,800 or so. So what this means is if we want to have less land distorting effects, if we want to take less corn off the market, we can get into these energy crops that have substantially higher yields. Although these require us to be able to do this cellulosic ethanol on a wide scale. In 1977, I was at Purdue, and some guy said we'll be able to turn corn stalks into ethanol for 30 cents a gallon 2 years from now. There's a guy in the chemical engineering department who will make the same statement today, but in between it hasn't happened. It seems like for many years, this has been just over the horizon, but we need some of you to get your degrees and go out and figure out how to do this cheaply. Mother Nature can do it, it just takes 1 million years.
Well, so why aren't we using like the energy cane and then the Jatropha stuff?
We don't really, well, Jatropha is a different story, but we don't use these things because right now we don't really know how to make them into alcohol on a wide scale basis. We can do it in beakers, but a modern corn ethanol plant makes 100 million gallons of ethanol a year. There isn't a 1 million gallon cellulosic ethanol plant anywhere in the country. They're mainly experimental, small scale things. Biodiesel is another example. Today, soybean oil costs about $4 a gallon. It costs you about 50 cents to put esters into it. The plant costs about $1, so that's roughly a $5.71 cost of making biodiesel. The government subsidizes it at $1, so the net's $4.71. What's the price at the gas station for diesel nowadays?
$3.55 HEB,
$3.90 or
$3.80 at
Yeah.
most gas station.
guess what? The biodiesel industry has 250 million gallons of installed capacity. Now, maybe it's 2.5 billion, and it made about 200 million gallons of stuff, so it used about 10% of its capacity. I mean, just the pure economics of it is an obstacle, and that's true on the ethanol side today too. If it takes you, if you take $7 corn and you get 3 gallons out of it, what's that, $2.70 a gallon of just the corn cost? Then it costs you like 50 cents a gallon to get there, so that's $3.20. There's a 50-cent subsidy, but you also have to get it to the location where you're gonna use it. You can't put it in a pipeline because it eats seals. If it gets near water, it sucks the water in, so there's some problems in terms of using it. Your car won't run on 100% ethanol. All this stuff around here is about 10%, and it's 10% because of its air pollution characteristics. It's an oxygenate and required by the Clean Air Act. So, you know, there's just some pure economics of this that don't work so well at the moment. But if we can get that gasoline price up to $5 a gallon, that changes things. And this is why at $1.50 a gallon, it just didn't happen. This is somewhere on, where was that last picture? I guess page up is not a command this thing realizes it likes. There we go. I don't know where my line is. There's another line on here somewhere.
It was there.
It was?
Just in light blue, yeah. It's there towards the bottom. It goes, it
Yes,
peaks
see,
just
this
above
is
500.
how much they've got, they built, and here's how much they're using. I mean, you can see that gap, it's enormous. Some of our regents went into the biodiesel business. I went to San Antonio 5 years ago and I said, this stinks, don't do it. And that was about when we were here. Now, this industry has expanded quite a bit over time, and I haven't drawn that expansion here, but still, notice in about 2008, the biodiesel hit its Waterloo. Actually, what happened at that point is that the Europeans said you can't send us biodiesel and collect our subsidy. So when that happened, they were double dipping on subsidies, getting both the US and the European subsidy stopped working.
I don't understand how capacity could outstrip production, because you have to pay back the loans that you got for your capital costs to build the capacity.
Have you heard of
And-
bankruptcy?
And then you have to produce in order to pay it back, so, you know.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of problems. If you decide you want to build an ethanol plant, when do you think you get your first gallon of ethanol?
2 or 3 years after.
It's at least 2 or 3 years, there's some permitting, etc. So what happened is when things were looking good, they started building a lot of plants and everybody jumped in. I used to tell a story, you know, there's a famous saying, everybody and their brother got in the business. Well, my son went to Consolidated High School. A brother of one of his classmates called me up and said, I want to go in the ethanol business, tell me how to do it. I mean, everybody and their brother was getting into this business, and they overbuilt. It's as simple as that. It's kind of like apartments in College Station. I mean, I can't see how we're filling all these things, and I guess the ones at Mockingbird Lane and Bryan must be dirt cheap nowadays. What's happened over time is they've just overexpanded. Everybody thought these high prices would continue. The other thing is soybean oil today is $4.71 a gallon. It was $1.30 10 years ago. So a lot of people had that mindset of that old cheap stuff. But when they started using a bunch more of it, the prices went up. And the corn ethanol prices made it go up as well. Another problem is technology.